Hey guys, my name is Jake Sessions, and I'm going to be talking about diabetes and basically the distinction between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, as well as basic facts, treatments, and symptoms. So, what is diabetes? Diabetes is a condition where your blood sugar levels, or your blood glucose levels to be more technical, becomes too high and your body cannot regulate it. Your pancreas makes a hormone called insulin that turns the sugar that you get from eating into energy. So there are two types. Type 1 diabetes is also known as juvenile onset diabetes. That's because it occurs mostly in children. It is also called insulin dependent diabetes because in type 1 diabetes, your pancreas doesn't make any insulin until you become dependent on artificial insulin. About 1.6 million people live with this. Type 2 diabetes is also known as adult onset diabetes. That is because, like type 1 diabetes, it mostly occurs in adults. And this is when your pancreas does not produce enough insulin, or the body responds poorly to insulin. More than 34 million Americans have diabetes, and 90% to 95% have type 2 diabetes. And if you think about it, this could be attributed to, all the fast food, all the processed foods, all the like sugary stuff that Americans thrive on, including myself. And so that's why this kind of makes sense. So some symptoms of type 1 and type 2, they generally have the same symptoms, which are frequent urination, increased thirst, unintended weight loss, fatigue, and one thing that is a little bit different is in type 2, numbness or tingling in hands or feet. And a lot of people, I've had some friends ask me, oh man, I think I have diabetes because I'm going to the bathroom so much. And I kind of ask them like, oh well, how many times, like for example, how many times you get up in the middle of the night? And they say like, oh, once or whatever. And I say they're fine, because I am a diabetic and I have experienced this. And usually with the frequent urination, it's like 5 to 6 times at night from what I can remember. Sometimes it's more, sometimes a little bit less. Some people get different symptoms more severe than others. But these are the basic symptoms to look out for. So what are the dangers? So the dangers are, there's hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia. So hyperglycemia is basically high blood sugar. And it is basically the same as the symptoms that I had just talked about. So like increased thirst, frequent urination, nausea, like vomiting sometimes, confusion. And this is because, there's so much sugar in your body. There's that energy that's not getting used, and it's essentially just in your blood. And so this is how you feel, and you just, for lack of a better term, you feel like crap. You feel tired, you feel weak, you don't feel like doing anything, your body is just exhausted. Now with hypoglycemia, that is low blood sugar, which can be very dangerous. This is where, so with hyperglycemia, it's like you have too much sugar and not enough insulin. With hypoglycemia, you have too much insulin and not enough sugar, or mostly just not enough sugar or energy, which can also be very, very dangerous. Some symptoms are like shakiness, like getting sweaty, confusion, like headaches. Some other ones are like increased hunger. And some ways to combat this is just to eat sugar and to get your blood sugar back up. And these two can be very dangerous with hyperglycemia. If it goes untreated for a while, then you can see a lot of health problems in your eyes and in your nerve endings. Um, with hypoglycemia, if it goes untreated, some people can pass out and go into a coma, and things like that. So what are some treatments? So for type 1 and type 2 diabetes, treatments are pretty similar. Diabetes as a whole is, pretty similar, but there's just those little distinctions. So for type 1 diabetes, they're they are they rely upon insulin shots, and because their pancreas doesn't make any, and it's an important hormone to have, so they rely on that. Diet, which is important, and exercise. Those are pretty much the three main things. And like technically, you could eat a bunch of sugar and like take your insulin and be fine because you took your medicine. But we all know that if you eat too much sugar, then it's not really good for you, and it might come back to bite you in the butt later. With type 2 diabetes, there's diet and exercise, and since type 2 diabetes is mostly affiliated with overweight or obesity, they focus on weight loss. And sometimes, depending on the severity of type 2 diabetes, people do have to use insulin or other medications like metformin, which is a pill, but it isn't as often as type 1 diabetics. Another common treatment is using tools to monitor your blood sugar, which is important. And you see people sometimes prick their fingers and they test their blood sugar to see where they at before they eat. Thankfully, there's new technology, and there's something like this, which is called a continuous glucose monitor, or a CGM, which is pretty much a sensor. And I have an app on my phone, and I connect to it via Bluetooth, and I can check my blood sugar whenever. And it's just so convenient. And there's also insulin pumps that you might see people. I personally don't have one, but it's just a little thing that they keep in their pocket, and they can just dial it in instead of giving themselves shots every time, which is great. And those are some other treatments that type 1 and type 2 diabetics share. So looking ahead, I might have made it sound like diabetes is awful or maybe not that bad, but it is tough to deal with, and it affects lives. It affects those who have it, like their lives, like myself, and it affects our loved ones. I'll share a personal example. When I was diagnosed, I was a freshman in high school. So you can imagine, you're 12 years old and you're in high school, you're kind of finding yourself, new crowd, and you get this life-altering disease, and you have to change your eating habit, your exercise habits, and you have to be more conscious of your blood sugar and like where you are, and it affects your parents too, because they have to adjust to that lifestyle too, taking care of you, and it is tough, but you can get through it, and you can have a good life from it. But there are limits, unfortunately, mostly in careers. So I know you can't be an airline pilot, and you can't, join the armed forces. And if you think about it, that makes sense, because you don't want, those dangers of hyperglycemia or high blood sugar, or hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. You don't want those things affecting your ability, when you're, flying a plane, or, you're in a firefight. You don't want those things to, to compromise you. But, you can still have a normal life. One thing that I really like is famous people that I share this disease with. A couple are like Tom Hanks. He's the actor. He has type 2 diabetes. He makes great movies and, he's done pretty well for himself and pretty awesome. Another one is Bret Michaels. You guys might be too young. I know I'm too young. He was in the band Poison in the 80s, rock star. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 6. And, he partied. I'm not saying it's okay to party, but like he partied and, had a good time. And now he does like charity work, for diabetes companies and stuff like that, which is awesome. Another one is, let's see, Nick Jonas. That one everyone should know. He's an actor and he's a musician and he's great. And, he, has a normal life and he's very successful. And lastly, there's Jay Cutler. He's kind of old. He's a quarterback for the Broncos. He's a quarterback for the Bears. Professional athlete. He's a type 1 diabetic, and he's this amazing athlete on a professional level with this disease, and that like people can have a good life from it, and it is a shame that there are illnesses like this, but normal people with this can have normal lives and great lives and be successful and make an impact on the world, which is great. So this was my presentation, and I hope you guys learned a little bit about diabetes. Thank you.